and a mock assault would be made on the neck of the peninsula at Bular by the navy. The moment drew near. The excitement of the adventure ahead seized the minds of men. Rupert Brooke, the poet turned soldier, expressed the universal feeling.
I suddenly realized that the ambition of my life has been to go on a military expedition against Constantinople. Oh God, I've never been so happy, I think. Like a stream flowing entirely to one end.
But Brooke fell sick and died before the expedition sailed. As the great armada pulled away amid a tumult of cheering from the troop ships towards the battlefields of classical antiquity and the Golden Horn beyond, Sir Ian Hamilton wrote in his diary,
Almighty God, watchman of the Milky Way, shepherd of the golden stars, have mercy upon us, smallest of the heavenly shiners. Our star burns dim as a corpse light. The huge black chasm of space closes in. If only by blood, thy will be done. En avant, at all costs. En avant.
The first landings were at Gaba Tepe, where the peninsula narrowed to a bare 4 miles. At 4 a.m. on April the 25th, the boats cast off from warships and troopships, bearing their loads of soldiers towards the dark and hostile shore. For these men, more than all others, this was a culminating moment. These were the Anzacs, entering their first battle, determined to make a name. From the gentle pastures of New Zealand, the turmoil of Sydney, the dignity of Melbourne, the wide spaces of Queensland and the West, they had come not just to fight the Turks, but to lodge their youthful nations in the great affairs of the world.
It was pitch dark. Then all of a sudden, a dim outline of the coast loomed up. As we got closer, we were all getting tensed up now and nervous, wondering what was going to happen as everything was so quiet. Then a single shot rang out and a yellowish light flared up in the sky. From then, everything was let loose. Machine gun and rifle fire directed at the boats. The pinnaces cast us off. The muffled oarsmen took up the row. We were rowed ashore. As soon as the boats grounded, it was every man for himself. It was out. As we scrambled ashore, those who were lucky enough to get there, we found what cover under the cliff we could. As we lay there for a few moments, gathering our wind, we slipped off our pack, fixed our bayonets, and someone in the crowd, there was no officer, no one in charge. The order was, right lads, after the bastards.
At 5 o'clock that morning, Liman von Sanders was roused with a series of alarming reports. The Allies had arrived. Von Sanders galloped off to Bular. There he remained all day, waiting for the landing that never came. The first diversion was a complete success. So was the second. The French landed easily on the Asiatic coast and took 500 prisoners before they withdrew. Opposite the French at S Beach, the landing was also successful. At Y Beach, on the further flank, 2,000 men went ashore without a casualty. But they did not press inland. At W Beach, the Lancashire Fusiliers fought their way ashore through dense barbed wire under a murderous fire, giving their name to this battlefield, Lancashire Landing. evening they had linked up with the men at X Beach further north. But the high drama of the day was elsewhere. At 6 a.m. on the 25th of April, the naval bombardment lifted over V Beach, and a floating Trojan horse neared the tip of Cape Helles. In broad daylight, the collier SS River Clyde, with 2,000 troops aboard, grounded herself gently offshore. Doors opened in her side, ramps came down. Dublin and Munster Fusiliers poured forth. Seconds later, 20 small boats loaded with more Fusiliers scraped the sand beside her. It was very quiet. But the Turks were ready.
Well, they opened up on the shore. And they was firing not only machine guns, rifle fire, they had these nice little pom-pom shells, all nice painted colours, beautiful things. And they was hitting off at the side of the ship and ripping the people to pieces. And even the bullets, if they missed you, was hitting the ship and going and tearing pieces out of them.
3.5 hours later, barely 200 men were ashore, and these were trapped in a small area of safety beneath a low sandbank. The brigadier was dead. The survivors crouched behind the plates of the River Clyde and waited for nightfall. Flying overhead, an Allied airman looked down and reported the water was absolutely red with blood. V Beach had been a catastrophe. Not until the following day, after bitter fighting, did the British capture this beach. To the north, the dawn of the first day found isolated groups of Anzacs chasing a fleeing enemy.
By 8 o'clock time, we were well advanced, I should say, somewhere between a mile and a half. And later in the morning, we got well across the peninsula and we could see the coast of the Narrows.
But now a Turkish colonel arrived on the slopes of Saray Bayah. His name was Mustafa Kemal. Kemal realized at once that this ridge was the key to the whole southern half of the peninsula, that the enemy must be driven off it. He rallied the retreating Turks and sent for reinforcements. His orders were uncompromising.
I don't order you to attack. I order you to die.
The Anzacs were forced off the ridge. By the end of the day, 15,000 men were crowding into the Anzac bridgehead, 2 miles long by 3/4 of a mile deep. On a narrow beach, barely 1,000 yards long and 30 yards wide, supplies and equipment piled up. And down from the cliffs came the wounded, choking the incoming traffic.
It was about the most precarious position a bloke could find himself in. You sort of made up your mind, well, we're here, and the only way he can get us off now is by carrying us off feet first.
Altogether, there were 30,000 men ashore on Gallipoli. Casualties had been heavy, but that was expected. More serious was the fact that none of the main landings had achieved their objectives. Now everyone stood by for the Turkish counterattacks against those frail footholds of the Allies. Hamilton told his men,
You have got through the difficult business. Now you only have to dig, dig, dig until you are safe.
and so they dug, and the Turks dug too. During the pause that followed, Britain and her allies took stock of what they had done. Questions and doubts sprang into men's minds. With dismay, Kitchener and the government recognized that the enterprise which was meant to resolve the stalemate of the war had only, in fact, produced another affront and another stalemate. Waves of consternation spread. The foundations of the government itself began to tremble. At Gallipoli, the battle flared up again. On the 18th of May, the Turks, outnumbering the Dominion troops by 3 to 1, tried to wipe out the Anzac bridgehead.
They came over in 2 great waves from their trenches, in great hulking mass, which they were rather big men, the Turks, fine body of men. As they came over in 2 great waves, they were shouting, "Hello,